Rowdy Roo and Hullabaloo, kick 'em in the dishpan, roo roo roo.
What's up, all you doodles and doodlers out there, you schemers and dreamers, and welcome back to another episode of Doodle Talk. This is episode 43. Come on in, get yourself a nice beverage, find yourself a seat on that couch over there. Just go on, sit down, and let's get this bad boy started. I'm feeling good today. Hope you guys are all feeling good. I'm feeling pretty green. If you can't tell what today's color theme is, got a cool little Austin FC jersey. Shout out Austin FC. FC Dallas is cool too. I grew up liking FC Dallas a lot, but I don't know, something about just the cool crest and everything too. Got this this jersey recently, so thought I'd rep it on the pod. So shout out to all the footballers out there, you soccer players, you doodlers, and you schemers and dreamers, you soccer players and footballers. Welcome back to another episode of Doodle Talk, breaking down this week's latest football news. No, we're not going to be doing that. But yeah, feeling good. It is officially Spoopy season, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I love Spoopy season. October is just the best time. It really is. It's just so good. Halloween's my favorite holiday because holidays are pretty stupid for the most part. Just most of them are just huge corporate cash grabs, and you just got to go spend money. And I feel like there's a big forced, there's kind of a forced money spending, forced you have to see your family during this time, and a lot of holidays are forced spending money, forced spending time, and it doesn't feel it always feels rushed, even if it's something you want to do. Of course, yeah, seeing your family during the holidays is nice for a lot of people, but there's something about Halloween where it's just about being spooky and getting candy as a kid. I think I loved Halloween so much as a kid that it just imprinted and has stayed with me as my favorite holiday, because I don't know, man, there wasn't not much anything better than just being a kid and getting to dress up in a costume, running around with your friends around the neighborhood and getting candy and stuff. And then there's just something that's so cool about the aesthetic and the vibe of Halloween, where yeah, obviously that gets blown out of proportion too, and then it's just it's a drunk Halloween parties, and it's just about I don't know. There's arguments you can make where Halloween is kind of stupid too, but I love it, man. I really love it. There is something about All Hallows Eve, man, where it's just I don't know. I don't really believe in a lot of actual ghosts and spooky stuff, but you do feel closer to that kind of you can really get in touch with your spooky side during October and getting closer to Halloween. And I think I've thought about this recently too. I think one of the main reasons I really love this season and Halloween too is because growing up mostly in Texas, that October is probably when you get your first couple of days that are below 90, or if you're really lucky, close to Halloween, it might even be chilly outside. Doesn't happen a lot, but just oh man, just getting over the summer and having the first couple of weeks of weather where you can kind of just take a deep breath and relax a little bit is so nice. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. Also, just a lot of cool, I don't really do Inktober anymore. I did that for a couple years a long time ago, but there's always cool art and stuff. I get really inspired around this time of year to make fun little art, and I think I don't know what I did last year, but a year or two ago, I think it was 2 years ago, made a cool little witch animation that was really challenging, and I had to figure out a lot of how to animate it in a way that I'd never ever tried before, and I still think that was one of my favorite animations I've made, just because it challenged me in a way I hadn't been challenged before, and I made the music for it too. And speaking of music, that's another thing too, is me and Jace and some other friends, we always do a Halloween special every year where we all just make a song or two of just whatever kind of spooky music we're feeling, or whatever kind of music, doesn't have to actually be spooky. And we make like a little mixtape every year that Jace puts out on his YouTube. Or yeah, I don't know which one it is, but he puts it out. I always normally shout it out too. So that's exciting. I always wait till October to start. So today is actually September 30th that I'm recording this. So spooky season officially starts tomorrow for me. But yeah, really excited about that. Just for recent art things and housekeeping and stuff, making progress with the AFTRA slide. So that's cool. I don't know when I'll be finished. I could finish it relatively quickly. I've already started like kind of roughing everything out. Essentially have like it storyboarded out. The nice thing about when you're making something that's only going to be like 3 or 4 seconds long is you can rough it out really quickly. You get the storyboards, the layout done, and then you can take your time, and hopefully what I'm hoping is I can make it look really smooth. And because normally I end up rushing a little bit, or if it's just like a looping GIF or something, I don't probably spend as much time as I should, or I'm always just anxious to start the next thing. But I think this will be fun, and I've already thought about this too, is like AFTRA is awesome, and I want to give a proper homage and like do this properly. But I think this could be a fun thing that I come back to every couple of years to kind of like show how much better I've gotten in with animation, or like backgrounds and like character design, or just whatever, or just do it in a different style. That is one thing I'm trying to animate in a different style than I normally do, where I can keep it kind of more loose, and it's kind of hard to explain, but I normally, when I am animating things that have like motion in them, like a character going across the screen or something, it's kind of like in the automated kind of way, where it's not as fluid or as like fun as I would hope it to be, or like want it to be. So I'm hoping I can kind of tap into that, really just kind of like Science Saru, like Masaaki Yuasa, kind of like just fun, crazy way of animating. I'm hoping I can kind of like transfer some of that. I don't know, we'll see. It may be a little bit more just straightforward for this one, and then that might be something I can kind of like go and check, or try again for the next time. But yeah, besides that, just been working on a lot. I've been doing a lot of just like drawing and pencil, pen, and markers. Like really got back into messing around with the Copic markers and just doing a lot of like just pencil and on paper kind of drawings, working out this one character, this really cool like Thunder Oni character that I've got going on, which is part of another thing that I'm hoping to, when the AFTRA slide is finished, I'm going to be like starting a little series, and this is what I'm hoping I can intertwine the 3D stuff with too. So but I figured it was probably best to start doing this 2D and start doing this with like more mediums I'm more comfortable with. So I'm gonna start this kind of like little world, this kind of idea that I have, with some kind of animations, and tackling some types of some kind of animation that haven't really done before, a little bit more actual storytelling kind of stuff, but still in kind of like bite-sized chunks. So hopefully it works out. I came up with a couple of really good ideas that were kind of like, I had a few holes that I needed to like kind of connect a few dots, and I was out on a run earlier and just came up with an idea that would like really solidify, like just basically get me to the point where I needed to get to where I can just like kind of start making a lot of this stuff. And you don't always need that, obviously you can just go out and start something, but sometimes when you are kind of, because you have this feeling sometimes when you're like creating something where you're just like, I need to get from point A to point B. If I can just figure out that middle piece, then it'll really make things like more coherent, and like really, allow me to feel like I can really sit down and start working on something. And I swear, like going on runs, or like recently too, a lot of my dreams, I've been having crazy ideas. But when I'm kind of stuck on something, going for a run is the best way to like clear my head and just come up with anything, like just any kind of creative thing. I cannot stress enough how important like exercising and running is for me, just for my mental health and just for my creativity and stuff like that too, because it's just when you're when your mind gets bogged down, your body also kind of gets bogged down. And when you can free up at least one of those things, because running for me clears my head and it like clears my body, right? You know, it refreshes me. So it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone. And then on top of that, I'm always listening to music, and I'm like really good about just like compartmentalizing, because when you start thinking about things, it makes running easier and stuff. You know, I'm only going 2 miles, but when you're tired, or like I hadn't really eaten anything, so sometimes it's hard. But when you just go off and start brainstorming and like daydreaming, it kind of makes it pretty easy. And then you look down at your watch and you're like, oh shit, I just went like a whole mile, I didn't even notice. So that's been fun. You know, definitely a feels good man moment there. Especially working on the like the traditional stuff a little bit more. Just feeling, I think I talked last time about like leaning back into my roots a little bit, while leaving the fun option of like getting more into 3D and stuff on the side, something that I'll just keep working on. But yeah, and I've come up with a few more ideas for like just YouTube videos and stuff like that. So working on a lot of stuff at the moment. This is another one of those periods where like I won't have too much to show for it for a little while, but trust me, there's a lot of videos and stuff that I'm going to be coming out with, just even like short little random YouTube videos that are not of me like actually making anything, but like art centered videos and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that. But for now, I don't have anything to report. Probably within the next week or two. At least 2 or 3 weeks for sure. The Akira slide will be out, so look out for that. And yeah, that's it. Today's episode is kind of just gonna be like a bunch of random like updates and things that I've noticed over the past week, and then just one kind of thing I've been thinking about the past like 2 weeks, ever since I got back from the States, and have been just trying to get myself back into the daily kind of like making art, and just shifting back into that mindset and that workflow. But yeah, just a couple random things, so I'm just gonna hop around. Animal Collective just dropped a new album, so if you're a fan of Animal Collective, go check it out. It's called Isn't It Now? It's a fun name. I like the album cover too. I feel like because they released an album last year on my birthday, which was cool. It's called Time Skiffs, and Animal Collective is in their like patchwork arc right now, where like all their album covers and all their things are like, it's either like paper collage kind of like patchwork things, or like this the new one is kind of like that, like almost like origami with like patchwork kind of stuff. And then the one before that was also just kind of like a patchwork kind of like hodgepodge kind of album cover. And the album really felt like that too. It was a good album. I need to listen to it again. I wasn't the biggest fan, unfortunately. There's a few songs that I really, really liked. But yeah, Animal Collective is just, I mean, I would say probably one of my favorite bands of all time for sure. Just going back, you know. Merriweather Post Pavilion is just, that's a masterpiece. That's a masterpiece of an album, you know, like. There are some of those albums where it's just like, you know, I think like Discovery by Daft Punk is another masterpiece kind of like that. It's just timeless. It's just classic. It's just, it gets you when you're at a certain point in your life, or like for a certain generation, like my generation growing up, we had like the golden era of like the indie bands and stuff, you know, and that was a hot moment. That was like one of the only times where like something got played so much that I actually like, but I didn't get sick of it. You know, there was one summer where we were, all our friends and everyone were hanging out, and like that was literally just, that album was on repeat the entire summer. And I wouldn't say I got sick of it. Like I would like be like, okay, let's listen to something else. But I legit never even, like, I didn't get sick of it. You know, I could still listen to it like basically once a day, which is kind of crazy. It's just that good of an album. But I've only listened to the first 2 songs of this new one, and they're pretty good. I'm digging it so far. So I had to stop and come record this Doodle Talk. So later tonight or tomorrow, I'll try and finish it. Listening to an album for the first time is a very like special thing for me. So I have to be in the right mindset, or like getting on the train is awesome for the first listen for albums, or like walking somewhere. So I might save it Like I was putting out some laundry earlier, and that's a good time for me to listen to music. So that's why I listened to the first two. But if you're interested in Animal Collective, I suggest you check it out. It seems like it'll be pretty good. Moving on, the SAG-AFTRA, the strike that's been going on. I did touch on this a little bit before, and there's a big update. The writer's strike is over, and from what I've seen, it's actually pretty positive. Like the writers and the actors held out for so long that the companies were just like losing too much money, and they had to cave, which is awesome. It's super amazing. So here's the long and short of it, is like they got a lot of good deals, and a lot of the things they were asking for, especially like protecting their rights against like AI usage and stuff, which is a huge topic, and I will be talking about in a separate Doodle Talk probably soon. But yeah, and just like getting, you know, proper pay and residuals for things, because Netflix doesn't ever show how many views a certain show gets. That's all it kept behind the scenes. So now they're going to allow people to essentially, it's still going to be like behind like NDAs and like secrecy walls, but they're going to allow people to see certain metrics so that they can get paid residuals on those things, so that it's not just like a black box, like oh, this show actually got like 100 million views, but we're not gonna tell you that, and we're just gonna pay you as if it had only gotten 50,000 views, you know, for 1 week or something like that, right? So tons of great stuff. But the thing is, it's like the contract is till like 2026, which is super scary, because it's essentially just enough time for like the networks to kind of like scheme behind the backs of all the writers and actors, and essentially build up the like a big enough library so that if another strike happens, they have enough material to put out, or like the AI will actually be that good at that point where they can, like, you know, I don't know, use AI to like help write some like kind of good shows, and then just drip feed everyone all the bullshit reality TV that they love anyways, that they can make without writers, you know. So hugely worrying. A great victory, but the war is not over. Super worrying. And that's just the writers. So the actors are still on strike. And apology, I'm pretty sure all that is right. Apology, I have not done too much research into this. I'm kind of just on the sideline getting my info from certain people and other YouTubers that I watch, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is right now. And then the writers, I just looked earlier today, and the writers are meeting with the like Hollywood execs on Monday. So they'll have already met by the time this comes out. Sorry, it won't be updated, but I mean, based on how the writers one went, I think we could probably say it's gonna be similar. It's gonna be like, oh, that's pretty good, but with like a few caveats that are just gonna be like, like that's really worrying. And you know, the executives and stuff, I mean, dude, I think it's like May 2026 for the writers one, so it's not even 3 years. It's like 2 and 9 months or whatever. But I mean, so that's not a lot of time. So it's like the execs know what they're doing. Like, all they care about is money, dude. It's so sad. But hey, it's a good. I think the actors will get something similar. It's still it's honestly way out. What they've gotten so far is way better than anything I was expecting. They showed like you could see side by sides of like the original deals that they were asking for, and then the refusals by the execs, and then the counter offer by the execs. And it was like, if they were asking for like 50% on XYZ, the execs were counter offering them with like 4%. Like crazy shit like that. But then you saw what they actually ended up getting with the compromise, and it was like 47. So it's like they only had to, like, the writers only had to compromise like 3 to 5% in certain places, where it's like, that's a huge victory. And a lot of those victories, the things that they did get, are gonna basically cement themselves, where it's like, come 2026, the execs are not going to be able to just overturn every single little thing that happened. You know, it's not going to be just like carte blanche, like wipe the slate clean, and like, you know, they're just right back where they started. So there are some things that they're not going to be able to take away from the writers and the actors, which is really good. So overall victory, but people with that much money are scary, and people who don't give a fuck about people and only care about money and producing more profit are really scary. I hate those kinds of people. They're terrible people, but they exist, and somehow they run all this shit and run our government and all that shit. So without getting too doomsday and scary, it's a victory. It's a victory in the end, So interested to see how Monday goes, and we'll see how that goes. But I think this is a good precedent to set for other unions and people. I think artists should have unions if they want, It's a really powerful tool at the end of the day. And I know there are some arguments to be had against unions, but I feel like, especially in a creative industry and for artists, it's 99% positive for most of the things. You gotta stick together and protect your rights and get what you deserve. So moving on from that, another little bit of news that happened recently is Pokemon announced a really cool Van Gogh collab with a Pokemon card company. And if you haven't seen, there's some really cool, oh my god, I forgot where. I'm so sorry. I think it's in the Netherlands. I think it's in Amsterdam or something. But they have an actual museum right now, showcasing so it's a lot of Pokemon art done in the style of Van Gogh, and I believe they have some of Van Gogh's originals there as well. I know they had the sunflower piece, and I think some studies and portraits that he had done. And it's so cool because you may know the famous self-portrait of Van Gogh. It's one of his really famous pieces. They did that, but it's Pikachu. And it's just so funny to me because I'm not the biggest, I didn't do art history and stuff that much besides outside of middle school and just learning, right? In my early days in school. But even I know how much of a troubled person Van Gogh was, and it's kind of it's sick. Van Gogh is probably my favorite. If I had to choose a classical traditional painter, he's my favorite. I love Starry Sky is my favorite traditional painting of all time. I just loved it as a kid, and it really inspired me to it was one of the things that kind of inspired me to get into art. And I loved the way that he I might be talking out of school here, I don't really know, but it was to me Van Gogh is kind of the predecessor to a lot of impressionist art, kind of before it got even more Monet and more impressionist-y. But that's just things that aren't perfect and things that are just more emotion based. My favorite, I was just talking to my friend Matt about this, but my favorite type of music as far as piano or more traditional classical stuff is the impressionist romantic era of Chopin and Liszt and a lot of people like that, where Frédéric Chopin is my favorite pianist, him and Philip Glass. So kind of it's funny because I like romantic, impressionist, and then also minimalism as far as the more classical traditional styles of things, which is a fun two things to but as far as just art and painting and stuff, Van Gogh is my fave. He's my goat. Because I wouldn't be too hyped on this if it were somebody else, I feel, even if it was Monet or something. But Van Gogh is just so famous, so obvious choice there that Pokemon would do that. But back to my point, it's just funny seeing Pikachu is smiling in the self-portrait, where I'm pretty sure Van Gogh is not smiling in his portrait, and it's I believe he had already chopped his ear off at that point. I'm not sure. But I just think of that of Pikachu, in his later years, he'd been rejected by a few women, and Ash had moved on, and Pikachu goes into dark times and cuts his ear off, and we enter Pikachu's dark era, his dark arc. But it's super sick, and one of the actual main thing I'm actually hyped about is one of the portraits, the collab portraits, the paintings that they had was Smeargle, and it's so sick, and it's done in Van Gogh style. And they haven't, I believe the Pikachu promo card is the only one they've actually released so far, but I really hope it's a mini set, a mini series, and I really hope they release one of that Smeargle. Smeargle is like top 2 or 3 favorite Pokemon, and his cards are always some of my favorite. I try and collect all the Smeargle cards, so that'll be really cool, because I don't really collect a lot of Pokemon cards, but that is one where I really try and get them anytime I can. And I love Van Gogh, so this would be a dangerous combination. And I mean, obviously I'm not gonna spend a lot of money on it, but if there's a way I can get it without breaking the bank, that'd be really cool. But it's really cool, you should check it out. I mean, it's the actual physical museum is in like Europe or whatever, you know, over there across the pond from America and Japan, so I can't go there either. Which is, Japan, our Pokemon company always does this, where it's like, I mean, not always, obviously there's a ton of stuff that happens in Japan, but for a lot of these cool releases, it's always like not in Japan. And it's like, damn, that kind of sucks, but I get it, it's internationally loved, you know. And that's it, we did it. That's it. That's all the little updates and the little news and stuff that I got for today. So to jump into like the actual like main topic, you know, since today's kind of just chill, but I do have kind of a main topic to get to. One thing that I've been thinking of, right, is like not getting complacent as an artist, and I mean that in a few different ways. One thing that I want to like remind myself is like that don't get complacent, but also like make sure to keep practicing and using references for things, because this is just something I feel like anybody who's worked in like the industry as far as like storyboarding, animation, stuff like that, they will probably like, you know, if you ask anyone how important references are, they would tell you it's like incredibly important. Just I mean, anyone who knows what they're talking about would tell you references are important, and you know references are important, but there's still that little part of your brain that's like, nah, I got this, I can do it without using a reference. And the reason that some of this is coming up is because for the Akira slide, I was like having a really hard time just kind of like in general kind of brainstorming it out in my head, and I knew that I was gonna sit down and like essentially like study it frame by frame and like block out keyframes and stuff, which is what I did. So as I was doing that, I was like, oh, this was so much easier than I thought it was going to be just for me to get started, right? Because I was having a little apprehension of like actually getting started when I was just designing what the character was going to look like. And I was like, you know what, let me just start blocking some stuff out. Character design can always change and can be added in the detail stage when right now it's, you know, I'm just blocking out where the character is going to be in the frames, the timing and stuff like that. And wouldn't you know it, using the reference is amazing and makes it so much easier, and you learn stuff from it, right? And like for the background, I just copied the perspective of the original, you know, background of the frames from the anime, you know, the movie. And it's like, man, use references, man. Use them. Please use references. They're so important. Because, I mean, this is obvious. I'm, like, copying the Akira slide. So, yeah, of course, I'm going to be looking at it. But, you know, like I said, you can always trick yourself into thinking, like, I don't need to use a reference. Or, like, only looking at one image or one reference. And, like, you shouldn't be too dependent on it, right? I think there is something to be said for, like, training your own creativity and training how well you're able to use your like reference library in your head is how I always like to think of it. But it just cannot be understated how important using references are, and just being like a little bit more meticulous, where like if you take the time to like sit down, use some study material, and really just like think about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and just kind of allowing yourself to get the upper hand by using references, or, you know, not rushing certain parts of it. You might want to like, I'm just gonna skip the storyboard, I'm just gonna skip the rough layout stage, I'm just gonna, you know, straight through animate this, and it's like the straight ahead animation, and it's like, yeah, maybe for some things that works, and maybe if your skill level is there, But I can tell you, like, unless it's something that I've animated a lot or drawn a lot, like the straight ahead animation is gonna kill me because, or like, it's gonna make it so much worse because I'm just gonna be assuming too much. That's the thing I was thinking about, is like, when you don't use references, you assume way too much. You assume too many things and you start guessing. And like, the last thing you want to do when you're trying to create a believable world is to start guessing, because I have this problem. And like, all this stuff that I'm saying, it's not directly for you. It's like I'm telling myself this. So I hope that's how it comes across, right? Because I was noticing, and this is something I've known for a while, and this is why I was saying, like, the don't get complacent thing is so important, because it's like, you fall back into old habits, right? And the reason I was just going back to this, like, the guesswork and the thinking about things when you don't actually have the information that would just help you so much, is it's really important, because you can make something in a loose and sketchy style, or, you know, like a not super polished, it might even just be like rough line work and stuff, but you still need it to like accomplish the feeling or the goal that you set out to accomplish, right? And you're not going to do that efficiently no matter what style you're using or how rough you want it to look. You're not going to accomplish that if you just skip a lot of the building block steps, or if you skip certain crucial steps, or if you skip using material and references that are really just going to solidify and make that world believable, right? And what I kind of mean by this is, like, you could be animating or drawing like the most obscene, crazy thing where like nothing makes sense, like proportions are wrong, like the hand is 10 times the size of the body. And that's all fine and dandy, because somebody who knows what they're doing and is like making the composition work, or like has using the right references, or like they might have something crazy going on, but the perspective, however crazy it is, actually stays the same, or it proportionately changes, so that like the people watching, or like just looking at the drawing, whatever it is, the animation, they are still getting like the knowledge, like the right information. That's what I'm trying to say. I hope that makes sense. Whereas like, if you kind of do it wrong from the start, if you don't use the proper resources and references, you're going to be guessing at a lot of stuff, and it's going to create those like uncanny valley moments, or like those parts of your drawing that are uncanny, and it's gonna like detract from the overall thing. And you can get away with it a little bit here and there, right? There's always I like to think of it as like, that's like charm a little bit, is like, how much can you get away with just like, screw it, I want it to look like this is like for style purposes, or like I'm okay with it not looking like exactly perfect. There's always some room for that. I'm not saying you gotta like get super perfect with everything. Trust me, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm like perfectionist in certain ways, but in no way am I like redraw this line like 100,000 times to make sure the curve is correct and make sure the proportions are 100% correct before I move on to any other step. I'm the opposite of that guy, which is why I have to remind myself so much to like, take it slow, use references, don't get complacent, like, don't overlook your bad habits, don't fall into bad habits, don't fall back on old habits, and to just be efficient with what you're doing, so that you can still keep progressing as an artist, even if you're not, you know, drawing 10 drawings a day or animating an hour a day, right? You can still like clutch out those hours during the week that you are working and like make it efficient. And that's the other thing too with references, before I move on to like the other part of what I was saying for this, like the references are gonna make your workflow so much better and smoother. You're gonna streamline things, and you're gonna start to learn how to use references in the right way, where that's something that I've had to learn recently too, is like using, like, for example, like anatomy references. So if you want to pose like a certain pose, sometimes, especially for like beginner or intermediate artists, it can be hard for us to like see a pose that's we want to recreate realistically, but do it in a different style, right? And that is another another way you can get these kind of uncanny valley moments, is because you might have something that looks like really accurate pose wise, but you like, maybe you wanted the style to be a little bit more cartoony or something, but the only way you could draw it is like making it super realistic or something like that. Or like the one hand, like you want a cool hand pose like this, so you take a picture and you draw it, and it's like just imagine like kind of Astro Boy or Mickey Mouse, where he would only have like 3 fingers or something, 4 fingers, right? And like a round glove or like a round curvy style. But then just like, it's kind of like a meme where like, imagine Mickey Mouse and then like the most realistic hand possible on right here, and it's like, oh, hey guys, like that's how you end up with stuff like that. So this is another skill, and this is something that I've been like kind of noticed before, but really I've been thinking about consciously in the past 6 months or so, is like the way you can discover your own style, or like to help create a style that is still like anatomically accurate, and ways to keep it like pleasing to the viewer, pleasing to the eye, and like not just skipping steps, because there's a trap where you fall into when you're just like, oh, but it's my style has bad anatomy or something, it's like those two worlds don't have to always exist together. Or like those two worlds can exist together, where it's like things can have good proportion and correct like anatomy for what your style dictates. The main key here is like consistency. And so one of the things that's really hard, like I was saying, is like using references. You have to learn how to use them correctly, and how to like embed them into your style in a way that doesn't disrupt the consistency of your style. And that's really hard, and that's something you can't learn right away. And it just comes from like tons and tons of practice of consciously sitting down and being like, okay, I want this hand pose, but I want it in my style. And you just have to kind of like incrementally break things down. And this is where I think like gesture drawing and really breaking things down into like simple shapes helps a lot. It's something I avoided for a really long time, because I don't know why. I always liked using like structural things. Like if you draw a circle for the face and you draw like the cross that's gonna be for like the eyes and the nose, right? Like those things were always okay to me, but like for some reason I never wanted to draw like a circle for the body and then another circle and like draw the bean shape or whatever. And I wasn't as into like actual construction. And once you start animating, and once you are drawing comics or manga and stuff like that, being able to faithfully reproduce your own creations is, I'll say it's tantamount. It's so important to your, I just wanted to use that word there. It's tantamount to keeping your style consistent, is being able to use the same shapes, or like being able to draw it the same way. And how do you do that? A lot of the time, wouldn't you know it, there's a reason why everyone uses these simple shapes to break things down. And there's a reason why you see like all these Disney characters and like all these more simple characters are all based off of these same construction shapes. And you start to realize like, oh, it all makes sense. And I don't know why I was just being like weirdly stubborn in this one particular area. And then you got to go and you got to learn how to use it, right? So that's what I was saying with like, maybe if you want to get to this realistic stage, but what you're going to do in the middle, or what you're going to do at the start, is kind of like block out the shape, right? Like where's the area that the hand is. Then you're going to go in, you might be blocking out individual shapes of the hand, like the fingers and stuff. And then you're just going to incrementally add more detail, right? But when you do that, you can take that middle stage when everything was still just like simple shapes, and then it's beautiful. You have this like epiphany, this aha moment, eureka, dare I say eureka, where you realize that like, oh my god, it's all like you have a Matrix moment where you're just like seeing the sushi, katakana sushi flying down the screen. I think that's what they used for like the code for the Matrix, right? You see the Matrix code and you're like, holy shit, it's all just simple shapes. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just like rattling off memes and shit here, but you know that meme of the guy in space and he's like looking, it's an astronaut and he's looking at the Earth and he's like, oh my god, it's like it's XYZ, and there's a guy with a gun behind him, another astronaut, and he goes, always has been. It's like, I'll try and put it up here. It's like you're looking at a drawing or an animation, you're like, oh my god, it's all based on simple shapes, and then the astronaut behind him just like, it always has been. That's my attempt at a meme right there. But it is really amazing when you notice this and you're like, oh shit, it's all just like clay, like Play-Doh that I can mold. And once you have these like construction shapes to work off of, you can add the style that you want. And this is why people tell you to like learn anatomy, even if you're going to be doing like simpler styles. Learn proportions, learn perspective. It's all so important, which is totally true, but there's kind of, I feel like that's talked about a lot, and rightly so, but there's kind of this other aspect of what I've been figuring out recently that people don't really talk about, where it's like, yes, of course, those fundamentals and those basics are really important, but a lot of people don't tell you why, right? Like the thing I had to figure out for myself was like, well, if you want the consistency and if you want the ability to kind of like change things and get to the style that you want, by practicing even more so that middle step where you're really just breaking down the shapes and like it's easily moldable from there, that's how you can easily manipulate it to the style that you want, or try new things. You know, if you know how to build a character that's 6 heads tall, but you still want it to be kind of like cartoony, or almost like maybe like a little bit more like a One Piece-y style, where it's like it's still like traditional manga style, but it has this kind of quirkiness to it, or like elasticity to it, right? If you're thinking of someone like Luffy, you will know how to do it. You'll know how to go in there and build the construction shapes. And no, you don't need to know anatomy 100%. And the reason is because you have a really basic understanding of anatomy, so you're good enough where you're like, okay, the calf is here, right? But you are able to build it out with the shapes, and then you can use a reference to get the pose that you want. And then you see the pose, and your brain doesn't have to just do a one-to-one replica, where it's like you can look at a pose and then use your own construction shapes that you have, that you've learned from breaking things down, and then you can manipulate that pose to be accurate for what you're trying to draw or animate in that style. And then once you're able to like kind of put those together, it's like you're unstoppable, right? Then you have the method to the madness. You have the code, right? And now this is something I've been like noticing more and getting a little bit better at, right? I still struggle with it a lot, but it's like it's funny too, because it's like, oh, now I have the code, but it's still really, really hard to do and to replicate and to stick to. And this is one of the things I've noticed is like, as I've gotten older and as I've been doing art for more and more time, I've learned so much, and I've learned how to do things, like how to do so many different things, or like I've learned a lot of information and tips for how to draw and animate. But if you get complacent and you don't like keep up practicing or just remind yourself of these things, you just fall into old habits. And then it's not even like, you know, you can still progress or you still can make things, but for me personally, it was putting myself in a spot where I wasn't able to do certain things because I felt like I just couldn't do it, or like, oh, I'm not good enough to do that thing, or like it would take me too much time to do this thing, where it's like sometimes that's true, where it's like my skill level isn't there, or like I don't have enough time to like, you know, produce my own like show, like an actual animated show, like all by myself. That's not realistic thinking at the moment, right? But you need to make sure that you don't use it as a crutch. That's what I was telling myself too. And the best way to do that for me is just to remind myself, like, don't get complacent, and to just keep practicing. Even just little things like I've gotten back into the habit of doing like some gesture drawings as warm-ups, or just making sure I get in 5 to 10 minutes of gesture drawing every day, which has been good, because that gets really stale, and you see the same kind of like gesture images and references and stuff, and you're going through the motions at a certain point. So take breaks of like, don't worry about that for a couple weeks. Work on something else, just drawing shapes, or like drawing a character that you like to draw over and over to get the consistency down, right? And then come back to doing gesture drawings. But like, don't leave things off forever. Like, don't put things off forever, and always make sure you come back to them. That's one thing that I've definitely been having to remind myself. And just practicing efficiently, right? Make sure that you're not just like sitting there and, you know, there are kind of wrong ways to practice. This is especially true in music too. Like when you're learning how to fingerpick on a classical guitar, you have to really be methodical, and you have to go slow. If you try and rush it, you're like, oh, but I want to do tremolo picking and stuff like that, and you can't even just do like basic like 4-finger like setting and picking and stuff. There's certain technique that you need to learn, and like how to, like the way your fingers are supposed to rest back onto the strings to dampen them. If you do it fast, you're never going to learn it the right way. It's especially true with music. I think it does translate mostly into drawing and stuff too. I mean, I don't want to get into the territory of like just telling people like, do this, don't do that, because I hate that kind of shit. But I think there are some pretty good tips. Like one thing that I do that always seems like that, but I think actually is really true, is when you see those like videos on social media where they're like, don't do like the chicken scratch, like line by line by line by line by line drawing. I actually think that's really true. Building confidence with your lines, or like learning how to use, when it's a big enough canvas or something, like learning how to use your whole arm and not just your wrist. I do think that's actually really true. There are fundamental things where like I'm a self-taught artist as far as like drawing and painting and animating, right? Music, I've had proper training. I went to school for it. But for the art and drawing and animation side of things, outside of like elementary and middle school, it's all self-taught. And you have to be careful, because you need to learn certain basics and you need to learn certain fundamentals. But if what you're doing doesn't require all those things, then you don't have to put too much pressure on it, right? I do think it's really important to emphasize fundamentals and basics, especially when you're a beginner. It's really just invaluable, as much as you might not want to, or as much as you think like, I'm just gonna draw things in my style and it's just gonna be the way I want it. And like, trust me, I've been there, man. But every time you sit down and you do studies, or you use a reference for that thing, it always ends up making the piece or the project or whatever you're working on better. So it's like, as much as you might want to just be gung-ho about it and like start that thing, and without doing the proper research or having the reference library that you need, 99% of the time it's always going to be better to kind of like be a little bit slower, be a little bit more methodical, do your research, do some studies, have your references ready to go, use your references, like I was saying, like kind of be efficient with how you're using them and efficient with how you're doing some like the beginning stages. It's going to make things better 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. And I can't recommend it enough. And on top of all that, I would say it's almost just as important, if not more important, to remind yourself to use references, to practice, and to kind of just like, you don't have to do it in a harsh way, right? You don't have to like beat yourself up over it. You can be very lax. Like one of the things I've gotten back into drawing with markers and pen, right? And it's literally just because it's been fun. Like today, I had a chore to run in the afternoon. I came into my room and just sat down because I was listening to some music. I sat down and an hour flew by, and I had drawn this thing just because I had the urge to draw it real quick. And that's like sitting down to play piano for me, where I can just like space out. I can kind of like relax, get in the zone, do that kind of thing. And it reminds you they're like, hey, this is why I do this. This is why I make art, is because like I can get in the zone. I can create these things. I can express and do things the way I want to. And like in order to get yourself to a point where you can do that better and more efficiently and express yourself more the way you want to, you have to practice and you have to study and you gotta use references and you gotta do some of these things that you don't want to do, and you have to remind yourself to do them. So that's basically it. But just remember, don't push yourself too hard, obviously. Like I said, like I was doing gesture studies every day for like months last year, and I got so burnt out, and like I wasn't learning anything anymore because I felt like I was just redrawing the same poses over and over, and that's partly on me. I should have been using other subjects and looking at real life studies and stuff like that too. But you know, then I took a break, and now I feel like I'm gaining something back out of it with a new perspective, and I feel like I'm just getting better from it, or better because of it, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. I'd say if you can't do all those things, like as long as you're having fun and you're creating some stuff, you're just making shit, you're making art, whatever, if it's good or bad, that's still to me the most important thing. So if it all feels too intimidating or like too much to like sit down and like learn learn the scales on the piano, or like how to do all the chords on a guitar, or how to do 2-point perspective, or like really sit down and study anatomy, don't worry. If that's too much, you can build your way up to it. Maybe just start picking little things here and there, drawing, keep making things, and you might just find yourself through practice and repetition getting better in just a physical way, where you can then feel more comfortable approaching some of these other fundamental basic things. And just never forget never forget, always always remember to like remind yourself to keep practicing those things and stuff, right? But that's it for today. I think that's leaving it off on a nice note. Keep creating, keep making shit, dude. That's what I keep telling myself too, is like, I don't care what I'm doing, as long as I'm making things, trying to do the things that I want to do. That's what's most important to me. But I think that's going to be it for today. As always, thank you so much for listening or watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.